Welcome to B2B Commerce Corner. Commerce Corner is a sub-series of the E-commerce Edge podcast discussing all things B2B commerce through the lens of agencies, consultants, merchants, and more. Enjoy. Alex, I'm going to introduce you to my fans of the podcast here, and I'm going to try not to butcher your surname, Mr. Alex WITCPALEK, co-founder of Continuum AI. Welcome to the E-commerce Edge.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to dig in. I've seen your clips all over LinkedIn, and it's fun to be on this side of the table, not watching, not consuming, but being a part of it.
Look, it's awesome to have you along for the ride today. You work in the B2B space, and you're in the perfect spot for it in the heartland of B2B in Chicagoland.
Yeah, that's exactly right. A lot of supply chain distribution here in Chicago, up in Milwaukee, a lot of manufacturing. Yeah, so the Midwest in general doesn't get much better. You think tech, you go out SF, but not a lot of supply chain out in SF.
That's right. And even in New York, you think of New York as like a finance hub, also lots of big tech happening in New York as well. But you don't think in New York, when you think of manufacturing and you think of Midwest to East Coast, definitely the heartland is where you think of big manufacturing facilities in the United States, right?
Yeah. I mean, we do events all throughout the Midwest too, a lot in Texas, but yeah, good place to be for supply chain in the Midwest for sure.
No question. And before we get specifically into Continuum and what you do, why don't you tell us how you came to be in this space? Because if I looked back through your history and what you've done in the past, sure, lots of B2B experience, but not necessarily lots of logistics experience. So I'd love to hear how you got into this game.
All of my career has been in the B2B supply chain, technology for distribution. I played college football at the University of Louisville, and I very quickly found out I wasn't going to be making it to the NFL. And so I was like, what is Act 2 for me? And I knew I wanted to do something that could change the world, do something different in the world. It wasn't supply chain. And I actually joined a technology company, a company called SalesEye. They were CRM and analytics for distributors. And that's really where I fell in love with distribution and manufacturing. I saw a lot of really interesting elements, particularly around how you can connect distribution and manufacturing through a network. And Kevin McGurl, the founder of SalesEye, he actually now is helping us launch over in Europe. It's role reversal. I worked for Kevin, and now I have the pleasure to have Kevin helping us go launch over into Europe. A great start over there. And then after that, I led North American sales for a company called Continuum, who is doing order automation for distribution manufacturing. They did some other things, accounts payable, pieces like that. And I just spent 13, 14 years around it. And I think they say you hang around the barber long enough, you're going to get a haircut. And I fell in love with this space. And yeah, customers just kept coming to me saying, hey, we could do this. Returns, warranties, repairs, anything moving back up the supply chain. And zero people solving it for B2B. I always knew I'd start my own thing, didn't know what it would be. And yeah, customers brought it to me.
I love that. I love that, scratching an itch, so to speak. And in all transparency, we've never worked on a project together. I've never been exposed to your platform before, so I kind of have to go by what's on the website. But if I had to put you in a bucket of technology, I would call you the loop returns of B2B. There's plenty of retail, e-commerce, and omni-channel returns management platforms. There's AfterShip, return. There's a laundry list of them. If you logged into the Shopify App Store, there's 30 of them in there that manage returns, but none of them specialize in reverse logistics for manufacturers and distributors. And I'd like to think that's probably because of the incredible additional complexity when you're dealing with returns. You're almost like you have to almost become a full-blown 4PL for returns if you're going to be doing returns in the B2B world. Is that why you think that no one's really tried to attack this head on for the B2B world?
Yeah, I think it's a couple different things. Your comparison is 100% spot on with a lot of caveats, right? So if you take loop returns and RVAR, candidly, pretty simple solutions. Like today with AI, you could probably go rebuild something pretty simple and stand it up on the Shopify app. When it comes to B2B, This supply chain, incredibly more complex. Even if we start from a third of transactions happen online right now. So a lot of these transactions are like, they started on either commerce or EDI or a phone call. And so the data sources is just one challenge of the original order. And a lot of them end up back in the ERP. But then you have marketplaces like Amazon, you have marketplaces like eBay. So one is like the disparate systems you have to be able to connect to and gather from. Even alone isn't enough. The root of the problem that we solve is what we call a multi-party return. Okay. So when you have a manufacturer, let's say Milwaukee Tool, sells to Grainger, Grainger turns around and sells that to another business. Let's call it O'Hare Airport. Okay. When O'Hare Airport was like, hey, Grainger, I have 10 Milwaukee Tool drills that are defective. I need to return these. Now, Grainger has a catch-22 decision to make. They either say, I'm going to credit you right now, and I'm going to hold all of the risk that I can go get my credit from Milwaukee Tool. Or I'm going to say, no, hold on, Mr. Customer, you have to wait, and I'm going to go try to get that credit first. Either one's a suboptimal outcome. Either I'm taking all of the risk on, potentially missing vendor credits, or I have a terrible customer experience because my customer's like, why is this taking so long? And so there's an incredible amount of complexity in how you go connect that supply chain from manufacturer to distributor to end user. And I think that's really the name of it, is what we call the multi-party return. There's a ton of nuance in it. How do you optimize inventory? How do we engage the supply chain? Logistics tracking, checking warehouse inspections. But I think a lot of these other technologies really just don't quite capture or understand.
They also don't have to deal with things like quarantined inventory, distributors doing repairs and warranty work on some items for some brands and some SKUs, but yet there's other items and SKUs that they don't do warranty service for. Replacement parts, all that stuff. So in retail, it's like the merchant of record becomes the one that you return the goods to. Now, whatever they got to do behind the scenes after that is their problem. In the B2B world, there's a lot more, shall we say, shared liability up and down the supply chain. And that, to me, if I had to put it into a nutshell, if I had to boil it down to its simplest thing, there's shared liability for replacements, because you have so many people in the supply chain where there is no 100% clear merchant of record. And I think that's probably the single biggest issue that we deal with in B2B, because even in a case of a Grainger, for example, they might be selling so they might be a master distie of a brand, but then they might have sub disties across the whole United States. They might also have dealers with physical dealership stores all across the United States. And then they might also be selling to an end business. From the point of Milwaukee Tool making a product and it getting into an airport service team's hands or an airline service team's hands, it might have touched 4 different sellers who are clipping the ticket all along the way before it ever gets into the end business consumer's hands. And when you have that diffusion of supply chain responsibility, now all of a sudden we're in a scenario where now we have shared liability. And that shared liability means that there might be 3 or 4 different places where this product might be getting returned to.
Yeah. So first of all, I might bring you on as a consultant for our messaging, because that was quite incredible. You're definitely right. Shared liability. The supply chain I just described is a very simplistic view of it. You get a master wholesaler in there, and now we have a warranty claim through a master wholesaler. How does that play into this as well? Or we're dealing with a manufacturer who OEMs parts, and we have a defective on a replacement part. That whole process starts over again. And so I think you nailed it on the head. It is a shared responsibility, a shared reliability, and it's also shared brand degradation. If the end user's like, why is this process such a pain? Both the distributor and the manufacturer's brand are degraded.
Yeah, and I think there is a scenario where there also can be, under different return conditions, the manufacturer may tell the distributor that they may effectively authorize the return to the distributor, but with their RMA number. So we also have a scenario where we have to sync RMA data across 2 or 3 nodes as opposed to just one, being the retailer that sold the goods to a retail consumer. And I think the sharing of data is also a major hurdle to making this seamless for the B2B buyer.
That's why we're built as a network, right? If you look on our website, it's the B2B Reverse Logistics Network, to be able to share policies, practices up and down the supply chain, which comes as a whole nother challenge because returns agreements are not the same across distributors from vendor to vendor. And what are the buyback agreements? Do we have a non-stock return, but we have a pallet that we can add this on and it's going to go across our annual buyback agreement? The level of complexity that we deal with, we always, we deal with people is you have to love getting into the weeds and rolling up your sleeves because your understanding of supply chain to solve this problem. I mean, you look at what we built. We built an order management system, a warehouse management system, and a procurement system, all wrapped in this because we wrap the entirety of the supply chain. Returns are rarely in B2B a high volume challenge. You're selling t-shirts. Yeah, you can get a 30% return rate. We live in a world where our customers are doing a 3% return rate. Maybe some get to 5%.
Low volume, but very high value usually.
High value,
differentiator.
a complexity.
Yes. And I think one of the other scenarios where this challenge becomes more acute in B2B versus B2C, D2C is because in the B2C and D2C world, you can have some very one-to-many rules inside your returns management platform that says, okay, cool. If this is a high return individual, then instead of offering them a replacement or a refund, we're going to offer them a store credit, or we're going to offer them, we can have all these deterministic rule sets based on some very simplistic policies based on value of goods sold, number of purchases that the customer has made, percentage of returns that they've made, how often have they contacted customer service, because we've got data from our service desk, and we've got data from our physical stores that all sync into a central ERP or whatever it may be. And so I think we have this scenario also where let's just say the warranty requirements, both federal, state, and local, are pretty clear in the retail world. In the B2B world, they are part of a trade agreement. And so the challenge there is you have a wild variety of trade agreements out there in the B2B world that just do not exist in the B2C world. And so therefore, the terms of engagement are not as clear. It's a lot muddier in the B2B world than it is in the B2C world. Do you see that as well?
Yeah, we see that as well. And I think also the decision-making criteria is probably more opaque in B2B. For example, you might waive a restocking fee with one of your customers because you're working a big opportunity where it's like, hey, we got to override what a rule might be. And so there's a lot of this is a big data problem, actually. And I think that's why returns and warranties are actually the most right transaction to apply AI to, because the amount of data points that you really need to be able to take into consideration when making that decision is a lot. And you also don't really want to leave that in the hands of a CSR who thinks they're making the right decision for the business, but doesn't have the context to what taking a non-stock specialty buy item will do back into inventory when it comes to your P&L.
And I also think that it used to be, and I'm guessing you're going to tell me, hey, Jason, because it even says on your website, AI agents for returns and warranty processing for distributors and manufacturers, because humans should be focused on high value activities. Couldn't agree more. I think, for example, if I think about the contracts that I enter into with tech partners, SI partners, VC partners, etc., it used to, even in my own business, I used to have to send all that stuff off to legal. Like I used to have a lawyer. I didn't necessarily have them on retainer, but they would be on a job basis. And for them to review a contract, it might be 5 hours at $200 an hour or whatever it is. They would come back to me with a bunch of recommended red lines, protection changes, whatever it might be. I'd send it back and forth. And we're in a scenario now where I think those trading agreements, where the specifics of return policies between manufacturers, distributors, sub-distributors, dealers, retail partners, etc., I think because of those are part of trading agreements and trading, we in the retail world, we fall under like national estate laws. In the B2B world, we fall under contract law and tort law. And so because of that, everything is governed by a contract of some variety, every engagement. And so just in the same way, my business today, I can review contracts using Gemini working alongside me and say, can you read this 200-page or 50-page contract? Tell me all the gotchas. This is what I'm looking out for. Tell me the areas where it disadvantages me versus a supplier or whatever it might be. And it will give me all of the areas that I should be looking out for me. So it's almost like I got a lawyer in my back pocket. It feels like in your scenario, you've got effectively a lawyer in your back pocket called AI, which means that we can now ingest all these trading terms and trading agreements, and we can instantly know, okay, cool. Instead of it being deterministic, now we can move to a probabilistic model of how to deal with these returns in the very unique return scenarios we see in B2B. And it allows you to do that at scale instead of just throwing bodies at it.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. And that's one element, right? So you have hard-coded business logic, which is, hey, this is our return policy, right? Okay, that's great. And that works X% of the time. But then you have the rules of engagement, whether it's in an agreement that was over email, whether it's in a formal PDF, whether it's in an Excel doc, and all of that data can be ingested so that an AI can actually just make the right recommendation. And there's a lot of other data sets, like so if you're dealing with a customer, that customer, let's say I'm the distributor, has an engagement for how I get to do returns with me. But I also, for every one of those products, let's say they're doing a return of 4 products that fall across 3 different vendors, I have 3 different agreements that also need to be taken into account for what is my agreement with those vendors if I don't want to take these back in and they're not stocked. If they're stocking, what should my restocking fees be on that? Do I want to hold this product back in the inventory? Do I have demand for it elsewhere in my business? And there's a whole slew of decision trees that basically guide the workflows. And then the AI allows you to add the intelligence in that. I don't know that a human could quite handle those number of data points in making those decisions.
And even if they could, the reality is as you scale your business, you have to scale people linearly to deal with the scaling, right? Because you now have maybe a single human could handle, I don't know, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4 return requests a day if they're complex. Like if they're really complex returns, and I've got to look at contract wording across 3 or 4 different suppliers, and I got to then align that with our returns policy. I got to look back at the order history. I got to look back at return history. There's so much stuff that I'd have to manually connect the dots between that just without throwing bodies at it, it just doesn't scale. Whereas AI is a one-to-many logic model, and that's the beauty of it, right?
Yeah. And what we see a lot of companies doing actually is rather than trying to have one centralized person or team, is they say, okay, the customer side will be owned by customer service. Up the supply chain to our vendors will be owned by purchasing. And so now you look at sales, customer service, warehouse and logistics, purchasing and finance, all involved on a single transaction. We'll all have to coordinate. And so what these companies have done now is taken a single transaction. Let's say you're only doing, I'm going to make it up, 350 returns a year. You're running 350 unique special projects through your business every year, all just so you can go give money back.
Or even if it's not money, get a replacement product into their hands or do a warranty service for them or whatever it is. There's a unique process behind every single one of these RMAs.
And the reality is you're dealing with a net zero positive transaction. Like the only good thing that can happen is your customer is okay. You've done right by them, but maybe you get turned into a positive, but you have a ton of downside because when that goes wrong in the customer experience it degrades the customer experience. We just did a report. Every year we do one with Distribution Strategy Group. So we did the 2026 State of Distributor Returns. And returns, the delta between when you do it really well and when you do it really poorly on an NPS right? The best you can score is a 4, but the worst you can score is like a negative 4.5. Right? The swing is massive. And so when you do it really well, it's, yeah, you're going to get a couple of points, but when you do it really poorly, it's just it looms over the customer.
I've got two additional complexities that I'd like your take on, particularly in distribution. Maybe not so much in manufacturing, although it occasionally happens, but not as much as in distribution. You've got a scenario of VMI, vendor managed inventory. Yeah. That now becomes a new inventory location. That now becomes another nexus of broken or failed product that has to be managed up through the supply chain that is well outside the norms of, hey, I'm a distributor and I got 5 DCs across the United States. No, I've also got 150 VMI locations across my network. Maybe it's at physical dealer locations, wherever it might be, or it might even be specific customer locations. If I'm Boeing, I've got half of my inventory is VMI inventory that effectively my suppliers are giving me free finance on. And so that's a big challenge. You also have a scenario where in distribution, the opportunities for you to leave a good impression, like this becomes part of your value add over shipping cartons, pallets, and containers, right? Like this can literally be a make or break differentiating factor between you and another distributor. And I think that's like a double-edged sword that is uniquely challenging for distributors today.
It is. We talk about all the time. What is a distributor really? Right? They're a finance house, right? Because they finance for their customers. They're a logistics. They're last mile. The most expensive mile is the last mile. And these manufacturers don't want to own the last mile. They want to make products. And you have to, as a distributor, aggressively look for what are ways that can differentiate outside of those two things. Because you can't sell on price, or you can, but you probably aren't going to be around very much longer. And so certainly this is one of them, is the customer experience side. But you brought up VMI. Well, a part of returns is also just the returns to vendors. You don't even look at your returns to customers. So yes, certainly you have returns to customer. Sometimes we have to turn those into returns to vendor. But the first thing that you have to go do is optimize your inventory. So whether you're looking at VMI, like your actual VMI locations that you have, or your physical locations, before you go do a return to vendor on an annual buyback or buy-in or quarterly buyback, have we optimized our inventory, or should we be doing a transfer? So step one is looking at your actual inventory levels across your warehouses and suggesting transfers. Now, what's the excess? So now you know you have this excess. Now, what's your buyback agreement with them, right? And so let's get that on the next truck out of here back at the manufacturer. Then those manufacturers will have an agreement. You got to create a purchase order of greater or equal value. But at least you can get inventory back in there that's going to move. And so that plays into VMI. It plays into stocking your own warehouses. But this is all within the reverse logistics play. I need to get product back up the supply chain somehow. And it all plays to customer experience, managing the P&L, right? Optimizing your inventory, making sure we're not missing vendor credits, and getting humans out of this process that really just isn't the greatest use of their time when it's really just an equation.
And the chances, it's not just a waste of time, it's the chances for making a mistake are very high. So in other words, in the impact on your bottom line as a manufacturer, distributor, and the impact on the end customer experience the risk is so high that it's fraught with real opportunity to get it wrong. Even if you have very conscientious, very caring people trying to manage what is oftentimes a very painful process for the customer. Let's just be honest here. In the B2B world, returns are a disaster. I know because in my very early, I've been in this industry for 26 years now, but in the very first part of working in e-commerce, I owned a brand. I owned a parallel importing brand where we imported products from manufacturers into New Zealand. We warehoused them locally and we shipped them directly to end customers. And so we were dealing with manufacturing suppliers every single day. And so when we had a return of failed products back to us, then usually what we'd have to do, just depending on the manufacturing supplier, sometimes we'd aggregate 20, 30 returns up together, maybe send them back once a month or once a quarter for a credit or a replacement or whatever. Usually had to be a credit because The product that we sent back was then obsoleted by a new version of the product. It's just a very messy part of the industry that oftentimes is overlooked to the point where when I work with a lot of distributors as clients, and I'm putting together their tech stack, I'm helping them with platform search and select, I'm helping them with solution architecture, I'm helping them with integration with ERPs and PIM systems and logistic platforms and WMSs and everything else. But oftentimes in my discovery, because it's 175 questions in my initial questionnaire to the client, they'll put like one line, and this might be a $500 million a year distributor in their vertical, and they'll put one line in the returns section of the questionnaire that says, we handle these on a case-by-case basis through customer service. You don't need to worry about that. And I'm like, wow. Okay, so whenever we get to the workshop stage of actually working through their answers and understanding them a little bit more of how business processes work, then they start getting into the messiness of why it's a manual process, why it is treated on a case-by-case scenario basis, why they have 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 people dedicated to doing nothing but processing returns, depending on the scale. If they're a $2 billion distributor, they got like a team of 10 people that all they do is manage returns. That's all they do.
Yep.
And that to me is wild. They might have absolutely nailed and scaled their sales process, even across EDI, punch out, self-service e-commerce, automated CPQ and quote management and everything. Like they might have dialed all of that, but for some reason, it still feels like returns is a very overlooked part of B2B operations in terms of automation. It's like they automate absolutely everything else except that.
Yeah. Part of the question, if no one was crazy enough to go try to solve the problem, right? Like we're the only company that's actually doing it. But we were doing our UK launch event. It was in June of last year. So we were out in the UK and we had Edgar Aponte. Edgar Aponte was the former CEO of Rexel UK. He was the CEO president of Platt Electric here in the US. And he was like, this is incredible. He used to break his business up and think about it. He would say, okay, a third of my business is spent getting sales, right? Driving net new sales. A third of my business is focused on delivering and executing on sales. And a third of my business was spent on the post-sale experience. But yet we had no solution for the post-sale experience because we said it's so complicated. Nothing could possibly do it besides our people who really understood all the operational pieces of our business, but also the business context. And oftentimes we meet with executives and the first reaction is, oh no, we don't have a problem here. I don't think. And we just ask a couple of questions, a couple of diagnosis questions. Take a second. Like, maybe I got to dig into this. And it is lifting up the floorboards and they see cockroaches under there. And they're like, oh my God, I had no idea what this was doing to my P&L. No idea what this was doing to my operational efficiency. No idea what this was doing to my customer experience. When all gets exposed and they start to talk to sales, customer service, warehousing, the logistics team, the finance team, and they really dig on it, I think it actually becomes very quick that this moves to the top of the priority list for these executives because they're like, there's not many solutions that could actually impact all these elements of my business and have such a ripple effect on the P&L and that. And so it does take a bit of an education process. We've done a fairly good job of doing it. We grew 50% last quarter alone. So it's been a little while, but to say the least, we're very fortunate to have hit an untapped vein. But I do think the supply chain is in our eyes for a challenge that really exists.
What is your response to a manufacturer or distributor that says, oh yeah, we handle RMAs every day and our ERP is set up to handle reverse logistics and it's set up to handle account credits and credit notes and it's sort of like our ERP can do this stuff. Like, how do you respond to that? Because we all know it can't.
We don't have to spend a lot of time convincing people they have a problem. Typically, it'd be by asking questions like, okay, how many hands does a single return have to go through? And my team just keys it into the system. Like, okay, and then do you send a shipping label or do you have to dispatch your own fleet? Oh, sometimes this, sometimes that. And how does that get done? I'm not really sure. Okay. And let's say it's a non-stock or defective. Then who's actually going back up to the manufacturer and requesting that? Our purchasing team does that. So wait, I thought it was just a keystroke up from your customer service group. Oh, there's an email that goes over to the purchasing team. Okay. And if the purchasing team doesn't get an answer from the manufacturer, what happens with that return? Is the customer just waiting? So a lot of it is really just getting them to open their eyes about what that process really looked like. When we get down with the business into like the weeds with the business users and mapping out the process, they literally say, our executives don't want to hear about this stuff. They don't want to know about that. And I don't think there's a silver bullet of what we say back. I think it's an education process of getting them to open their eyes that, yeah, it's not about the keystroke of an RMA into the ERP. That is very simple. It doesn't matter if you're running on Epicor P21, NetSuite, SAP, keystroking the transaction into the ERP is not the value we provide. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can automate that with AI to extract emails and you can have your customer self-initiate that. That's not the value. The value is the coordination across all the departments and the different pieces, whether it's back into your WMS, if it's a manufacturer, how do we do the inspection process out in the warehouse? How do we actually tell if it's resellable, if it's in a resellable format or not? What kind of restocking fees should we apply so we take the right restocking fee to recoup our costs? Should you be carrying it on your shelf? It's those things that are where the value of this is, not stroking it into the ERP. If it was our value, I'd be pretty sad about what we were doing for supply chain product.
And you've been doing this for just over 3 years now. And 3 years ago, I remember ChatGPT was just starting to really hit the zeitgeist of consumer-facing LLMs and AI. Mm-hmm. It feels very much like this platform, your platform, it would be very difficult to do what you do without AI. It has to be an AI-first platform for 2 reasons, and then I'll let you correct me where I am imagining this the wrong way. First is multimodal AI. And that means that we can ingest documents in many different formats. We can have a DocuSign document, we can have a Word document, we can have a Google Doc, we can have a PDF, we can have a spreadsheet, we can ingest almost any form of data, regardless of where it originates. That's the first thing. We also have a conversational AI model today that allows us to create behind the scenes default prompts under certain scenarios that make sure that and we have vector databases as well, where we can store this data for future searchability and matching capabilities. And we also have hybrid search. We don't just have the content itself of a contract, but we also have the metadata behind the contract. That we have the title of the contract, we have the name of maybe the contractors in the file name. Maybe we even have it sitting in a specific directory on a network drive or something like that. So we have access to organizational data that might be in a million different formats, that might apply in multi-layered ways. But with AI, it allows us to create, instead of having deterministic rules, we have loosely coupled rule sets that says, okay, in this scenario, this is the outcome that we want. Within the context of this contract, how do we achieve that? And it's the connect the dots ability of AI that is the game changer, not only in my own business and my delivery of work for my clients, but for everybody else I've written apps with Lovable. I've written apps with Claude Code. I know how this works. And the cool thing is that we have these vast context windows that a deterministic platform it's way too brittle to deal with the types of scenarios that we deal with every day in B2B.
I think you're absolutely right. Solving this problem with rules-based approaches solves a percentage of it, but what percentage, I'm not exactly sure how far you'd really get. And the use cases in this problem for AI continue to expand. Our team built AI agents that can go log into manufacturers' portals to go file the return, right? So rather than emailing the manufacturer, go log into the manufacturer portal, and it can scale to n number of portals we've never seen before. It logs in with your username or password. It figures out where you can go initiate your warranty claim or your return with the manufacturer. The manufacturer may change that. It's self-healing, right? So it's agentic RPA. Could we have launched? Yeah, purely in deterministic way. Would we really be able to solve the root of this and get the humans out of the loop in this process? Absolutely not possible, right? It would have saved some time. What percentage of time? It would have helped your P&L. What percentage of the P&L? It's really an AI problem.
Yeah, and I think AI, it can connect dots across so many different domains that when it's trained on your data, your contracts, your
Yep.
default rules is probably
SOPs.
yeah, your
SOPs.
SOPs really. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's guardrails.
We have customers that have 35 SOPs, but then at any point, one manufacturer policy may negate the entire SOP. So
Yeah.
all of that context.
Yeah, it's a pretty exciting time to be alive. I actually, until we and Distribution Strategy Group and that team over there, I saw you listed as one of their speakers on a couple of their AI talk tracks about returns and everything else. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you, is because I'd never heard of your platform before. And as somebody who works exclusively in the B2B space, I was like, how could I not have heard of this tech? Like, I feel like almost I'm out of the loop. Why have you've been around for 3 years. How have I not heard of Continuum around returns for B2B, the B2B world? Absolutely crazy. What's next? If you were to look out over the next 6, 12, 18 months, is there anything you don't do today that your customers are begging you for? Or is there any other gaps in the industry that you've already spotted and you're saying, okay, we don't do that today, but talk to me again in 6 months and this will no longer be a problem?
I think a lot of this comes down to liquidation plays, right? How do so we're optimizing your inventory, whether it's moving it back up, right? The network flywheel is turning really well, right? So in certain verticals, we sign up distribution, they start to recruit their manufacturers onto the network. We sign up manufacturer, they recruit their distributors. So I think the next evolution of where our customers are driving us is really around the inventory optimization and what we do to help them optimize the inventory and remove inventory that's obsolete, dead, slow, and obsolete inventory. Marketplace plays, pushing inventory over to marketplaces. We're built as a network, right? So when we sign up a distributor, they recruit their manufacturer on. We sign up a manufacturer, they recruit their distribution on. Where we're seeing a lot of that is in HVAC and plumbing. So a massive amount in HVAC and plumbing, just with the warranty rates. Electrical is very quickly, and that's electrical sensors, electrical wiring, electrical components. But we're seeing automotive, heavy duty. There's building materials,
Aviation, everything.
Yeah, so many. And it's really about how can we help them? So we're already helping them optimize inventory and moving it back up. Let's say it falls outside of a supplier agreement, you can do it. How do we get rid of this product off of our books, but make some cash along the way? And so I think that's a big area for us. We really are focused on how do we own the reverse logistics space. Is it interesting to go try to do something else that other people do too? Yeah, but like for us, we're growing at a crazy rate. And I think our customers are really just asking us, do more around repairs, do more around rentals, do more around anything coming back up the supply chain. And I don't know how long it'll be this way, but for now we have.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. Like I said, I haven't come across, and maybe you have a competitor out there that I'm not aware of, but this is just, returns are like a dark art in B2B. That's the reality, is that you have people that have worked in B2B procurement for 30 years, but you have people that have worked in B2B returns for 30 years too. And this is the unspoken thing. It's saying the quiet part out loud that this is an operational capitulation by most B2Bs, where they have just resigned themselves that this is a nasty part of our world that is just a cost of doing business, and we don't really think there's anything we can do about it. And the fact is, clearly with your technology and with your support, with your strategy, there is something they can do about it. And they need to start looking at that, just like they're looking at how can we bring AI into self-service e-commerce? How can we bring AI into EDI? How can we bring AI into e-procurement? How can we bring AI into Salesforce operations? How can we can turn now all of these sales channels into multimodal AI, headless channels, email, WhatsApp, Slack, and Teams. AI is transforming those channels for Salesforce automation. And so they're looking everywhere but here in terms of automation. And I think that's a massively overlooked opportunity as far as I can tell.
Yeah. I think the P&L of our customers would say, we have a customer and we said, hey, we have this other account. They know you, they're in their area, and they want to do a reference. And they said, with all due respect, we view this as one of the last opportunities to differentiate. And we would rather they didn't join you guys. I'm going to have to decline that. For you, I hope you win their business, but for us, I hope you don't. And so I think a lot of our customers that join our network are viewing this as one of the last areas to really differentiate. Like, what percentage of B2B companies have commerce? What the adoption rates are, okay, that's one story. But how many have them? A large percentage of them have them. Whether they have a new strategy they're rolling out. How many have a CRM? How many have pricing optimization? How many have purchasing automation? How many have order automation? How many have a WMS? There's just not a lot of unique ways where you can really differentiate from your competition. And I think the companies that we're partnering with are seeing this as an early adopter for a unique value add to their customers, but also to their EBITDA as they either look to at multiples or whatever upon exit.
And contain cost. I think that's a really important thing here. And absolutely, it goes straight to the bottom line. If you can cut even 10% of cost out of returns management, that is significant when the net margins in B2B can be 3%. So the reality is if you can gut 10% of a single cost center in your business or more, that is a significant needle mover when your margins are so thin. So couldn't agree more. If you could snap your fingers and sprinkle fairy dust on the B2B industry at large and change one thing about it, anything about it at all at the snap of your fingers, what would it be?
Data connectivity easier to get into. But I also think that's one of our modes. It's hard to say because our team understands P21, Eclipse, NetSuite, SAP so well.
And all the rest.
Yeah, exactly. We know them so well that it is an advantage. But I do wonder if that plus TIM data plus manufacturer replacement data was just connected in a better way, what would that do to the world of supply chain? Taking myself out of it selfishly.
Do you think that Onyx is going to do something about that? The order network exchange standard that's becoming more popular. Do you think that that's going to help?
I've watched a lot of cycles in this space, and this is the third one that's going on this march. And I think here's my view around the network. It's like EDI, right? It's just like EDI in the sense that you know how much venture dollars have been poured into EDI to disrupt EDI, and yeah, who's still standing? TrueCommerce, BigCommerce,
SBS.
SBS Commerce in TrueCommerce. And why is that? Because to make it work, it requires all parties to engage for it to work. And so like, you can get all the suppliers to want to go change, but if Walmart doesn't change, it ain't happening. And I think that's the problem when it comes to data standards or anything else is it needs to be backwards compatible into the old world, and or it needs to be what we call network independent value. So there's value independent of the rest of the world changing. It's like when we say there's network independent value, we're like, people ask the question, what if my manufacturer's not on your network? We have AI agents that can go file the claims. They could go email on your behalf. Oh, so I don't need my manufacturer to join. But then instantly, the manufacturer starts getting all this engagement from our agents. We're like, what is this? And they lean in. And I take myself out of it because our mission statement is this. a completely connected supply chain. Imagine the unthinkable. It says nothing about returns. It says nothing about warranties. It says nothing about reverse logistics. And so if there was one thing that I think just would help that vision and our mission of what we want to accomplish happen is data connectivity through the supply chain. Now you have constituents who want to throw banana peels in the road and try to make that not happen for their own self-interest. But I tell the team this all the time. Like I take new employees when they join our business and say, think about if our vision played out, if it existed, what the way we view the world and what we want it to be. If it existed during the pandemic, what would that have been? How different would that have been if you had a completely connected supply chain where you could have complete visibility to where raw goods, materials, and the production and how that played out and what we were building? If our vision played out and it existed in the pandemic, how would that have changed? During the Suez Canal fiasco, how would it have changed? And the reason I bring data connectivity, and it's a super long answer, is because I think it helps play out our vision and our mission statement of what we ultimately want to build for the supply chain.
Wow, grand vision. Couldn't be more excited for watching this play out in the B2B world, especially. How do you guys make your money? You're a SaaS platform. You're fully connected via APIs into all systems that can handle APIs, and you connect to other systems that connect in other ways. Do you base it on a transactional basis? Do you base it on a fixed monthly SaaS fee, gold, silver, bronze, plus a transactional fee? How do you guys make your money? How do you do your pricing?
Yeah, it's all consumption basis. So it's based off the number of transactions, right? We found that to be the best model. Customers can step into it, and basically we prove our value every month, every year that you're using the platform. If you're not getting value, you're not using it, we're not getting paid. And it also doesn't make sense to go with a per seat license, not just because SaaS is dead, but because you're going to want everyone in your organization to have visibility. Where is this return at? What happened with this return? Your salespeople want to know that. You want to have connectivity to it. So we right size the value with how much you use it.
That's fair. That's fair. Skin in the game. Love it. I will drop a link to your LinkedIn profile and your website in the show notes. Other than that, how do you like people to reach out and have a conversation about all things B2B reverse logistics?
Yeah, LinkedIn's great. Shoot me a note on LinkedIn. Connect in with me on LinkedIn. I try to get as active as I can. Been a little challenging with the growth rate lately, but I love to connect on LinkedIn and just, it's how I think that's how we got connected too. So I think it is such a great network. I still find it incredible. As much AI hype there is on there, there's still some great connections to make.
I couldn't agree more. Listen, fabulous conversation. I've learned a ton. Like I said, didn't know you guys existed until we made that connection to have this conversation. Now we're at the point of the conversation where I get to flip the script. I get to turn the microphone over to you and let you ask me one question, any question you like. It could be personal or professional. Alex from Continuum AI, what is your question for me today?
My question for you is, if you had me say there's one unique differentiator for a distributor company, and it's not returns, warranties, and repairs, nothing reverse logistics, what is the one area you would focus on to optimize differentiation in distribution and supply chain?
The distributors that I'm seeing winning today are all tech-led, meaning that they are offering some kind. I'm working with a huge distribution client right now. They work in the construction space, and they provide software for getting plans permitted, automating. They provide free software. This is free software they supply to their customers that allows the integration of their parts catalog and their components catalog and all the specifications, all the pre-approved, all the certifications of steel beams and all sorts of stuff to be integrated directly into the systems that they normally use, whether it be the CAD files or whatever it is that they send off to cities and counties for approval for getting something built. And this is software that takes a tremendous amount of pain away from the designers, the developers, and the because instead of that being a manual process by their customers, it's automated. And there's lots of examples like this. Even if you were to go to the McMaster Car website today, right? What are the value adds? Like, they're just a distributor of hardware, like in industrial hard goods, That's all they are. Why are they so popular? And why is their website so popular when it looks like it was built in 1980? It's because of the aids that it provides all throughout every step of the customer journey, because mostly engineers use their website. And they know that's their primary customer cohort. So being able to download the CAD files in 15 different formats of a cap head bolt so that I know the tensile strength, I know the thread pitch, I know all those details, and I can get those into my design and my 3D CAD drawings easily and have those just explode out into my designs. That's a massive value add for an engineer. And the reverse, they can actually pull down the catalog, the full catalog into their design software, and they can spec that stuff in. And then what they can do is they can push that back up as a procurement list into the McMaster-Carr website to create the PO against. Now, all that stuff sounds simple, but these companies they've moved heaven and earth. I know that, for example, this building supplies company, they have a whole suite of internally developed software that does all this stuff. And so they've made, I don't know how many millions they've invested into it, but it's significant. Like, it is a massive investment, but it makes them so incredibly sticky with their customers that I think any way that you can find and I know, for example, suppliers in the heavy equipment space or distributors in the heavy equipment space, they provide direct connections to the telemetry systems of loaders and excavators and all this stuff, so that they get alerted effectively when, okay, this needs to be changed, or this needs to be replaced, or this hydraulic pump is gone, whatever. So they are embedding themselves in the entire buying, selection process, way beyond just, oh, I've got this SKU in this warehouse in Dallas. Like, they are so far beyond that, and that's why we see the best distribution companies and the best manufacturing companies, they're acquiring competitors at a great rate of knots. Famously, Home Depot just made another multi-billion-dollar acquisition to add to their pro capabilities inside the business. They're swallowing up local distributors.
They just got into HVAC too.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing companies that are digital leaders in every way, not just because they got the latest ERP or not just because they got the latest PIM, but they're leaders in every aspect of their business.
And I think the thing I heard you say is it's enabled client facing, right? It's internal tech tools.
Yes.
While distributor A is saying, ooh, could we monetize this? B is saying, we're playing the long game. And the tools that made for them not to do business with us.
Yes, and painful to leave and go do business with somebody else.
Yeah.
So it's exciting.
That's good.
It's an exciting time. It's exciting time to be in B2B. Wouldn't want to be working anywhere else. I've been doing it.
And there's real problems to solve. That's the best part. It's fine. You go build tech for other tech companies and go help that bubble get bigger. But yeah, the supply chain is the best place to be.
Man, it's exciting. And I used to never think supply chain was sexy until I helped to a brand that I was working inside of before I had my consultancy. And I helped us, because I was working inside the company, helped us do the whole replatforming of every single piece of technology in our business. And one of the sexiest pieces of technologies that we implemented, we went from a custom built WMS to an off the shelf, very cutting edge WMS. We were working with PeopleVox, and we implemented that, and we implemented for the very first time chaotic put away. We implemented for the very first time carouseling systems from the back of the warehouse to the front of the warehouse. Like, we implemented lots of cool stuff for the very first time in our business. And I got religion about supply chain when I started to see how automation could pick to light and all sorts of cool stuff that we did. It not only made better and more efficient use of our warehouse space, but it made everybody's job, all the way from the receiving team to the put away team, to the dispatch team, pick, pack, dispatch teams. It made everybody's lives better and more enjoyable and less painful. And that was when I got religion about supply chain. It's actually way more sexy than you think it is.
Yep. I love it. Wouldn't go anywhere else.
Listen, man, super, super cool chatting with you. I really appreciate your time, and I can't wait to speak to you again soon. Thank you so much. Are you a B2B or D2C e-commerce merchant? Then head over to greenwoodconsulting.net to learn how we can help you scale your business.